Welcome back to Homeopathy at Home with Melissa. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Bree. I am really looking forward to this conversation because we've had a lot of inquiries, both in Facebook groups and in our acute care forums, about impetigo. There's just a lot of impetigo cases lately. So I thought, let's talk about this because you have personal and clinical experience with this. And you're my skin expert. All skin cases go to you. So I'm excited to learn about this even for myself, but also so we can share this with people that are struggling with impetigo so they'll know what to do.
Yeah, I am actually very thankful now that I have this experience myself because I I tell people I know remedies can work. I have used some of these remedies for clients dealing with it. I do have a lot of little kids and babies with eczema, so this infection is very common. But very scary because in kids with eczema, there's open wounds sometimes all over. So it can get very bad for them very quickly. So if you are in that camp, I would highly suggest getting chronic care. This might not work. And by work, I mean you might not see the improvement in a child like that with severe eczema who gets impetigo early on in care. It might go downhill much quicker than I would say, quote unquote normal healthy state of a child who then gets impetigo. Or if you've been working with chronic care for a while and then get impetigo, the body's just at a better place. Your immune system's at a better place.
Yeah.
So I just want disclaimer. I am not a doctor. This is all information I've researched and found myself and used myself. So I also will tell people too, if it is helpful, go get a diagnosis, get whatever treatment that an allopathic doctor will suggest and have it on hand. And then if you do feel like you need it or want to use it this first time alongside remedies, you can do that. You can do one, the other, both together, but then you have it. So information can always be helpful. So
Yeah.
I want to get that little disclaimer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's important to note that we are not doctors, we're not diagnosing, we're not prescribing. And if you need help, you need to go to your doctor, and homeopathy can work alongside those things. But we've seen homeopathy really help a person's body fight it too and heal from it.
And I do believe even in severe cases it can work.
Yeah,
And I've seen it work. So I have seen it do that. Most often it is just how long it is a long process of healing.
yeah,
And it's very uncomfortable for a kid who's already uncomfortable with eczema. So it's more often that they want the child comfortable quicker.
right.
And rightly so. I don't fault anybody for that. So that said, I do see this work very well, and I got some really good tips and tricks having been able to use it on my own kids. I don't
Yeah,
like to suggest outside things outside of homeopathy when I haven't used them. So now
right.
I have, some tools in my tool belt, and I will also say this was like so it took some fortitude to stick with. I felt,
Yeah,
I was talking to you.
yeah, it was hard.
Oh my word. And I knew what it was right away. So this started, and now looking back over the summer, I remember after VBS, we did Vacation Bible School, and we all got some kind of viral cold, is how it started. I have had a history of strep throat in my past. I have not had it for years. But there are times where I will just lose my voice or get a sore throat with a cold, kind of reminiscent of that. And so the whole summer was off and on, had this sore throat. And I'm saying this because it may or may not play into how things developed. But my sons kind of went through various stages and they're different ages, so they don't all tell me about if their throat hurts or not. But the first one developed, we went to visit family. He got mosquito bites all over him. He got a couple blisters on his ankles from rollerblading. So this kid's covered in open sores. Not, they're not gross yet. They're just normal bug bites, right? They're just normal. Well, one day he had a spot on his face that I thought was a bug bite. And then he woke up the next morning and it looked a little crusty. So typically I just put vitamin E oil on it. And I mean like just pure, thick vitamin E, not anything cut with any other oils. And that I put that on sores and it heals quick. I didn't do any remedies. Well, the next morning it was bigger and a little bit, it wasn't oozy or anything yet, but like a little bit of clear fluid. And I have seen impetigo often, diagnosed impetigo. So I've seen, I'm really familiar with what it looks like. And I immediately was like, okay, that's probably what we're dealing with. And here's the great thing too about homeopathy is even if it wasn't that, I knew there is some kind of weird skin thing going on, and I'm going to immediately start with Pepper Sulf. And I typically do a 200. 30, if you have it, I would use it until you can get a 200. But skin infection, I almost always start with Pepper Sulf 200. That goes for a lot of things. Impetigo is typically caused, it's a skin infection caused by staph or strep that gets into an open wound. By within a day or two later, this kid, all of his open sores were now starting to be crusty. And it because that bacteria then spreads to any open sores. So
Nice.
in my research, it's not systemic. It's not necessarily, it can be, but it doesn't always happen that way. It's just a sore gets infected. And then in little kids, they touch surfaces, they touch each other, they touch their other open wounds, and it just spreads very quick. So that's where we started. And I started looking things up because I'm like, I've never had, like, my kids are fairly healthy. They have no other chronic issues. So I'm looking up what's the typical progression because knowing remedies don't stop it from coming up, we're going to move through this illness now. So what are we looking at? And it was sometimes 10 to 14 days until like completion. Keep in mind, I have 3 kids. So this doesn't sometimes start for like 5 days after the last one. So this was quite a long time.
So since the thing can last 10 to 14 days, I think that's what you're saying,
Yeah.
from beginning to end. It is actually an acute condition,
Yep.
right? But it could be caused or it could be because of a chronic condition like eczema, I think is what you're saying. But then, if you choose to do an acute consult with us, that this would not be the time to do that because the acute consult that we do is for 5 days.
Hmm.
You're not going to be clear in 5 days. So,
Right. It will almost, I can almost guarantee you it's not going to be 5 days,
right.
which,
So then if you think you have impetigo and you want our help, when you go to do the acute care form, it says on there, don't submit this for skin conditions because most skin conditions don't go away in 5 days.
yeah.
Reach out, to me or Bree, and we'll work something out.
Yeah. And I have done that.
Yeah, we'll
So
help.
yeah, we will absolutely do that. And I can typically we get to a good point within about a week where you know what to do moving forward. And then it's a check-in every few days. It's not because it's not usually like things are coming up and changing dramatically. It's like do this for a little bit. When things shift, we're going to move to a little bit of a different approach. And then it depends on is the kid itchy or in pain. So if you've dealt with hand, foot, and mouth, think of that it's a similar movement of an illness where you have some sores and then they kind of open. It's uncomfortable for a little bit and it's contagious until every single lesion is closed and healed. That can take a long time and it is very contagious. I mean, it's just bacteria. So it is a bacteria. The reason I think eczema kids get it so easily is because they're open, their skin's just so open and their immune system is not it's operating already at a high level. And so
Right.
you add an additional thing, it can't bring balance as best as
And their
well
kids.
as
Yeah, and their kids. Can I ask you, unless you had somewhere you needed to go next, what questions do you ask in an impetigo case? What do people need to be looking at?
yeah, so that does matter because we're going to look at where are you in the stages. Most often it does show up the easiest to identify on the face. I don't actually know why that is, but it will show up around the mouth. and it'll spread quickly. And I almost can guarantee you it's going to be something where you're like, I'm gonna post this in the Facebook group and be like, does anybody know what this is? That is most often when we see it because it doesn't look normal. It's not super scary right away, but it definitely doesn't look normal. And you're like watching it for a few days and it's like, this looks weird. It's just taking over their face. Then I typically see it spread after that. And it may or may not do all of these phases, but usually you'll see a sore that's already maybe there, or those will not blister, but they will start to ooze and get crusty. And this is usually like either clear or it might be a little bit yellow. And it starts with a thinner crust and then it gets pretty oozy and pretty gross. New places may then also start to develop for up to a week. Usually, like 3 to 5 or 6 days of new spots is the more average number that I see, but it can still go on for up to a week. Now, that's a couple by that last day or two, but then they start showing up like little blisters, like a tiny little bubble. Those are not painful. They usually don't get painful until they pop, so don't pop them on purpose. That fluid in there is the infected bacteria, right? That is what is going to then spread if it gets on other things. And so the blisters will pop up. You want to keep those covered if you can, not wet. So this is different than other sores. And that's when I saw the vitamin E, keeping it moist, made it open, like ulcerate a little more. That is a typical impetigo thing, or even staph and strep. So MRSA, any kind of staph or strep infection on the skin does not, if it's oozy and or wet, it does not need to be more wet. So you're going to go through those phases too. So at first, we're trying to dry it out while still allowing the skin to breathe and trying not to let it spread. So it's kind of a game. I'll tell you what I did for remedies and then what I did for other care. So you're gonna look for those little bruises, I mean, sorry, blisters. Those will open. It'll look like a ulcer, not deep. They actually are not very deep for how awful they can look. They're pretty surface level. It'll be like a round usually until they link together and then it might form a different shape. But that easier places for it to spread are like armpits, places that you can't really keep dry or like open. My little guy had his whole armpits were just covered. They were opening together. They kind of were morphing into one big open raw spot. And then they would ooze and crust. And that's when I was trying to dry them out, but I would cover them at night, and I'll talk you through all that. So they'll open, they'll crust. That is when they typically are painful. If they're rubbing on clothes, if they're like, in joints or in areas like if it's a diaper, if it's in contact with things that can be painful. Once they ulcerate and start healing over, that crust will eventually just dry up and come off. And there, my boy's skin was perfect underneath. It was very topical. It wasn't like a scab. When a scab comes off, it's kind of pink, fresh skin. It was pink skin, but it was smooth and good. Not a deep, there was no like what do you call that? It wasn't a scar that was like a pock mark or anything. It was smooth and pink. They still do have some skin like pigmentation difference. It's light. Some spots in the sun healed very quickly. Mine did. I got a couple of them. They're totally normal now. Each kid might still, even a few months later, have some more pale spots in parts that don't see the sun as much. So that's kind of what you can look for. You're probably going to see varying stages at the same time. Some spots are open and crusting over while new blisters might be coming. And so those spots I treated differently. And how I did this, it was just my preference, and I'm going to tell you, and you can do what you want. But first thing I did, remedies. I'll go over remedies. Before I do that, do you have any questions or should I go in any type of order? that you prefer?
No, I don't. I think that's perfect. Yeah, remedies and then how and which I'm sure you're going to talk about how you differentiate between how you choose the remedy, based on the presentation or whatever.
Okay, so baseline, I'm doing Hepaur sulf 200, antimonium crude 30, 2 times per day, every single day this entire time. That is your baseline. It's helping the body to fight the bacteria. So that is what Hepaur sulf, we call it the homeopathic antibiotic. Doesn't operate at all like an antibiotic, but that is when you think infection, think Hepaur sulf, especially in skin conditions. So Hepaur sulf 200 and antimonium crude 30C twice a day, taken at the same time. So I put those together and they took those morning and night. They probably did that for 2 or 3 weeks total. I even did that as everything was healing, we kept doing it. So that's your baseline. That's where I started. Um, Also, pretty baseline when there were active open wounds, which was a majority of the time, Hypericum 200 and Arsenicum 200Z. Hyperarse is how you might see that. That is really good for pain, itching, it also is a great infection combination. So I would do that every 3 hours when it was like when they were complaining, they were in pain. And then backed off to twice per day as well as things, maybe that last week, as things were really healing over. I was then doing supportive infection care more than it was pain management. But that actually, I didn't add that until a few days in, like after my first kid, poor kid, he had the most spots and he was like a guinea pig. I hadn't figured out my routine yet. But the addition of hyperRs for the other two was very helpful for their pain and the itching because you can't itch. They're open or oozy and trying to crust over. And if you're itching them, you're going to pull them back open. And it can make the infection spread, but it can also, I mean, just hurts. So Hepaur sulf and antimonium crude and then hypericum and arsenicum every few hours if the pain is severe, and then back off as you improve. So then you might go from 3 or 4 times a day to 3 times a day for a couple days, and then twice a day as you finish off the last few days. The two that I would alternate or use depending on what stage we were in were Rhus tox 30 and Graphites 30. Rhus tox 30 I was using for the initial blistering stage. And like I said, they might overlap a little bit. So do what is more prevalent. If you have 3 blisters and all of the rest of the spots are oozy and crusty, then do Graphites 30. If you're primarily in the blister stage, but you have a couple that are oozing, stick with Rhus tox for another day or maybe two, then shift to adding the Graphites. Those ones I did do every 3 to 4 hours as long as those stages were active. So you have your twice a day remedies, and then the graphites and Rhus tox I would use just alone every few hours during the most prevalent stage. Um, that is all I did for remedies. And so typically it was Hepaur sulfate and I mean like maybe 4 remedies,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 5. And I don't always do that in acute situations. This was unique, but that
Yeah.
worked when I started that right away as the other two got it. They moved through it much more quickly than the first one.
What about Merc Saw? Do you know if that would ever be good?
I think it could for sure. I didn't know thinking about that. So it does have the ulcers like hand, foot, and mouth. It's a really good one. It's really good for
Mm-hmm.
blisters too. So I I think because I don't know. Actually, yeah, I think it could be a
Well,
good option. I just didn't need it.
yeah, exactly. So,
I'm
so
sure I
if
did
you're
think of that.
trying if you're trying these and they're not helpful, and you need another idea, Merc Saw is definitely one to consider.
For sure. And belladonna, the hard part is it is hard to, I mean, how do you gauge what is, the age old quote unquote, what is working? When you're in a
Right.
skin condition that has to run its course, I was really, when I picked the remedies, I stuck with it because I knew it is going to be hard to know unless you've dealt with it, which I had never had it personal in my home. But I actually don't know that I've ever used Merxol for, I don't, yeah, because so maybe this is how my mind was thinking then. I didn't take notes on that part. Roostox is blisters, itchy blisters. Also, graphites is oozy. I think Merxol is more ulcerative and it has all those elements, not as oozy as graphites. And Impetigo
Mm-hmm.
is very oozy. It is
Easy.
nasty looking.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
Let me tell you what. So, looking at my notes, just to know how, because I think you were just saying, how do you know if it's working? Well, remember that often in homeopathy, we look for the mental emotionals, the energy to get better first. So you might see their energy come up or their mentals, they feel better mentally and emotionally and just energy wise. And then we're looking for, um, hmm. We are looking for a decrease, right, in redness and heat and sensitivity and burning and itching, but it is likely going to get better before it starts to do that.
yeah.
When the lesions stop spreading, right? Wouldn't that be an indication that now you're
I
going,
would say a slow, I felt
okay,
like,
that's
and
slow.
yeah, maybe it would stop. My experience was not that. They kept coming for longer than I honestly felt comfortable, but
Yeah.
I knew, I mean, I knew it was in the range of normal, but it took
Um,
a long time. They were still developing new blisters. I mean, and truthfully, guys, I was like, if I did not have the history I have with remedies
right,
with skin,
right.
I would, and I still was. Toward the
Hmm.
end, I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm a week in here and he's still got new blisters today.
Yeah. And you
Is
couldn't go anywhere and do anything. I remember that.
no, and I'm like, I know this stuff works. Like it's gonna work, right? Like
Yeah.
they're getting better. I'm not being neglectful. Nobody's like it's not gonna get terrible. But they were fine. They were playing. They were eating.
Right.
They were happy, no fevers. They never had a fever,
Did
which
you notice, sorry, did you
no,
notice that the crusting as they went towards the end, did the crust become thinner and lighter in color? Was that a thing?
yeah, yeah, they do.
Okay.
Because by the time they flake off, it was very easy. It was not painful like a scab. So it's the only two references I had was like a scab where you know it's deep and has to slowly like the edges kind of peel off.
Hmm.
When they were ready, it would just like come off. Like almost sometimes in like the whole piece, which is kind
Yeah.
of gross. But yeah, they did get thinner when they're because it was stopped oozing, so they had just dried out.
Yeah.
I did find that when so here's well, do you want to talk more about remedies before I get into other supportive measures?
I don't have any other remedies to ask about, so no. Yeah,
I
supportive
will say
measures.
too, their pain levels, like I could tell they wouldn't complain about them hurting when I was doing well-fitting remedies. Um, and they did get really itchy toward the end, like as they healed. Even I had like 3 or 4 spots on me,
Mm-hmm.
and it was only for a day or two, and I would just want so badly to scratch them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is almost a crazy itch. I was not as good at remedies with myself.
I know, we never
Um,
are.
but the arsenicum, I started staying on top of it when it was itchy. So arsenicum was a good one for itching. But supportively, what I found is the biggest shift in the healing, really turning a corner was when I could dry out those oozy spots. And what I ended up buying was golden seal powder. I bought them in capsules. And I remembered when I had had Summit at home, that was something they have for infection on their umbilical cord, if anything were to come up, because it dries it out, it's antimicrobial, it's really healing, and it cleans. And so I'm like, I remembered this. This was days into my first son, like I said, but poor kid. I had already been using Manuka honey and I got calendula tincture, but not alcoholic. It was like an oil because obviously alcohol
Mhm.
would hurt an open wound. So I got calendula. It's more like a infused oil, I guess, more than
Mhm.
it's a tincture.
Yeah.
And then Manuka honey, they all said the Manuka honey burned. So
Oh, yeah, it does. Well, yeah, oh, yeah, it does. I was using Manuka honey when I had the eczema on my fingers when I
yeah,
worked at the hospital. I was putting the Manuka honey patches on my fingers when I went while I was at work to keep it covered.
it burned.
Oh, it burned so bad, but I knew,
So
but it was helping. So I was like,
I know, and I've actually found that with a lot of my eczema clients can't
hmm
stand, they can't use Manuka honey creams. It
hmm
burns.
yeah,
So that did not work well when you have little kids and it
that's
burnt. They're
right.
not about to, they're
Yeah,
already in pain. He
yeah,
literally, my littlest, he's a little dramatic, but
yeah.
he screamed like, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I get this
Oh,
off of you, you know?
oh, I know. How
So,
do you get it off?
and because I had to use, I mean, I used like a rinse, like I rinsed it
Okay.
because, yeah, okay. So I would do some vitamin E oil or, calendula, that oil cleaned it.
hmm
And then I would put vitamin E. This was before it was oozy. Like if there were blisters, I was just covering those suckers. Trying to keep, I had, these kids were covered in Band-Aids. And I went through, I'm not lying. I would sit there at night and I'd open like 30. We'd count the spots and I would open that many Band-Aids and we would stick them over. And I got, they were, as they got bigger, I would put like a gauze and tape them up to keep them at night, especially when they're getting hot or, like sweaty or whatever. Um, so I then, when they were really oozy, moved to this golden seal powder. And I opened them in like a little dish and used a Q-tip to apply it. I have since learned some tips and tricks for you all. So you don't have to do, it was kind of hard to do that. I'm like, you don't want to cake it on because you want the skin to breathe. So it's a very light layer. You don't, like I used one capsule for days on all of their spots. So I mean, you have to buy a whole thing of it, which is unfortunate. But I used a few this capsules this whole time, and it will turn black. It will make it dry up, like it will create a scab, and it turns black. So it actually looks terrible. It looks like you have a rotten spot, but it's not. It's actually dry, and that's the golden seal is what is turning black. It's not your skin that's turning black.
Okay. Yeah, that
Um,
would freak me out.
Yeah, Summit, he literally had these just black, it looked like cigarette burn marks like all over all his bug bites. Just
Oh
got cut all these spots on him. So but that allowed for it to dry up. It stopped spreading as quickly. Those spots were not morphing together like they had been. And then I covered them at night. I did not get those wet at all. As they created more of that they dried out. Then I was using the calendula tincture again with vitamin E oil, like that thick vitamin E oil, and then I'd cover them, and then things moved pretty quick. Depending on, like at that point, one of them I had to keep soft because if he would move, it was like opening them again. So you kind of have to play the game, or I would soak him in a warm bath with, I put some of the calendula tincture in the bath and just let the warm water. I didn't do Epsom salt or anything in case that would burn. I think I did an oatmeal maybe one day, but he just sat in it in the warm water. I kind of helped some of the thicker spots just rubbed very gently when they weren't super raw anymore to get some of that off so it wouldn't crust the same. So you can for the powder, the golden seal did sometimes burn. Not as bad as the honey, but a little bit of burning. And so you can use things like arrowroot powder. I looked up some other powder options that are maybe gentler if you have like a little baby, um, instead of the golden seal. So you can use kaolin clay, arrowroot powder, calendula powder. Those are the three other recommended ones. And you obviously don't want to be inhaling the powder. So if you have a little kid, you can use one of those makeup poofs, like a little thing. I don't even know what you call that, like a cotton thing. A Q-tip worked okay for me, but it was kind of hard. Um, so that might be a better option. You can put it in a little sachet. I don't know what you call those things, like in that it can puff out of, kind of.
Okay.
I know those are things. I don't have that.
Yeah.
Who has that? I don't know. If you have it, use it.
I don't even wear makeup.
But drying it out was a game changer, though, I will say. So if you have, and with anything, if I have eczema babies who are oozy, if you can get it to be dry without compromising, like without suppression, without
Hmm.
compromising anything else, um, zinc is hit or miss here. I don't recommend zinc all the time because it does dry it out, but it can be really harsh on the skin too. So the powder shifted things a lot. I think that is all. I know that was a lot, but if summary, you have the remedies that I named, and if you just get in your routine, and here's the thing, even if you don't know it's impetigo, I would start as soon as you see any kind of oozy crusty thing. If it's oozy crusty on the skin, get started. And then you can get in touch with us for help. You can see if that shifts, if it moves to something different. It might not be impetigo and it might go away really quickly, and then you don't need remedies very long. And then as far as other measures, I really use the calendula tincture, vitamin E oil, and golden seal powder in a lot of band-aids. So that's pretty much it. I don't, that's not very glamorous. It's not very fancy. And it was a lot of work, but it did go away. They've all healed great. Um, and I got a few spots, like I said, but now, I mean, it's been gone for a long time. And they're all good. So I'm glad I had the experience, but it tested me. That was
Yeah.
quite an experience.
Yeah. What I'll do is, take this transcript of what we've talked about and just make like a summary page or something. And so if you, I don't know if I'll be able to post it, with the podcast episode, but I'll post it wherever I can. And then if you want to reach out, if you need the summary page, or you can pause the episode and take notes for yourself. But I will make a little summary page so that you'll have all the things. And I think this was very helpful because I think especially if you have little kids, you know what to have on hand, be ready. These are common remedies,
Oh,
that are in
yeah,
kits. These
they
are
are.
easy
And
to
a lot
get.
of them you could find locally. That is
Yeah.
something you might not find 200s, but you might. Even if you can get 30s, I did feel like they're for this specifically, 30s worked great for some of them that I used.
Hmm.
I also do want to say it is very scary. It can be. And in Western medicine, you hear the term like staph or strep and
Hmm.
panic. It's like you have to treat it right. You
I
have
have
to
to
take
have an
care of it.
antibiotic.
You
Yeah.
have with an antibiotic. And so that is what kept me going is I knew even the times where I'm like, oh my goodness, is he still getting spots a weekend, a couple spots today? And I always think, okay, well, if I'm gonna go in to take to a doctor, what are they gonna do? They're gonna give me an antibiotic. That's literally the only option. And
Hmm.
so I'm like, well, I'm not gonna do that. So, I mean, and it's not that severe. Then I think the lengths that the space that my child personally would have to be in for me to be okay with that would mean the benefit
Exactly.
outweighs the risk. So he would have to be extremely sick. And there are times where that would feel fitting to me if the
Yep.
time were to come.
That's
This
right.
isn't it though. I'm looking at my kid. I'm like, he's fine.
It's fine.
His
Yeah.
skin just looks disgusting right now, but like
Right.
he's fine. And and I in this way it's a benefit, have the benefit of seeing how often they don't actually work and very often they do become systemic infections because your body now has no good bacteria to fight. It is a bacteria.
Right.
But we're killing that bacteria, but also our own. So okay, I forgot. This reminds me, I did buy a probiotic. I'm not a big supplement person, but I did buy a probiotic and was giving them high dose vitamin C. I
Hmm.
should have added that.
Yeah.
You can do things like fish oil, good skin, vitamin A sometimes, but I didn't do a lot of that. My kids are little. But high vitamin C to support their immune system at that time, they actually tolerated it a lot. So that was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And a good probiotic I did for about a month until it ran out. I just did it
Hmm.
until it ran out. I don't know that did a whole lot, but you
Hmm.
do want bad bacteria thrives in a bad environment. if you can create a healthy bacterial environment, it
Mhm.
will eat the bad stuff or
Yeah.
kill it, you know?
Yep.
So, all that to say, I just think when parents more often it looks really bad and it feels like a scary term, but these are bacteria that are just everywhere. And if
Hmm.
we can strengthen our bodies to a place where they are not a threat all the time, then
Right.
you don't need an antibiotic right away. Um, so that's what kept me going. I always think, what's my alternative? Does that
Yeah.
feel like it's something I would even consider right now? No. Well,
Right.
we're just going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
So
Yep. We have to use discernment with our children and yeah, and not let fear play a role in any decision that you make ever, right?
either way, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
don't be
Right.
afraid
Right.
of medicine. Use like what you know, use your knowledge,
Hmm.
ask questions.
Yep.
Don't be afraid of stuff. That doesn't help either if you're afraid of medicine.
Right.
If you choose it, know what you're choosing.
Yeah.
And then get ready for what you need to do after, you
Yep.
know? Something
That's
happens.
right. That's right. Yep. We'll just address whatever comes up after that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I think that's good. I hope this is helpful. Truly reach out to me. I love if something that I had to go through is helpful to someone.
Hmm.
Not that I
Yeah.
have. It's not like we really suffered that much. But
But yeah, you saw it. Awesome. Thank you, Bree. This was so helpful. Yeah. I'm excited to I'll get the little summary sheet together and we can share that, along with the podcast episode when people are having impetigo problems or if you need personal help, one-on-one acute help, then reach out. And that means, email me, Melissa at melissacrenshaw.com and just say, hey, my children have, or my child has impetigo, and, what can we do for acute? When I say work something out, I mean, I'm not gonna, if you do the acute consult, that's only a 5 day, not, I don't want to say only like that's not a good amount of time. That is a good amount of time, but not for skin. So I'm not going to charge you double because we're going to go 10 days or triple because we might go 15 days. This is what I'm saying. I'll work something out, for payment because this is going to take a little bit longer. And then if you have anybody in your family with a skin condition, so that's, eczema, acne, psoriasis, whatever skin condition, Bree is the skin expert and she can help you chronically. She also has a skin support group for her clients. So her clients only. And so fill out the free 15-minute phone call appointment or form on my website melissacrenshaw.com, and then I'll get in touch with you, we'll talk about it, and then I'll get you set up with Bree so you can get help for all your skin things.
thank you. Sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks, Bree. Have a great night.